Welcome back to Snappy Exploring. This time we're going through Egypt, and it was a pretty hectic trip, so let's go. Our first stop was the Great Pyramids of Giza. Now, these are such an imposing sight, but I almost didn't even make it through the security gate. I had my 200mm lens in my backpack, and in order to get through, I ended up having to pay about $1.30 Australian bribe to let that get through. But once I got through, the sight was absolutely amazing. This biggest pyramid here was built for King Khufu, and it's made out of 2.3 million blocks of stone. Can you imagine how hard that would have been to build back in 2500 BCE? Absolutely nuts. Pyramids are the last remaining ancient wonder of the world. And back in the day, they were fully covered in a limestone coating, which you can still see on the top of this pyramid here, which was built for King Khafre. And of course, no trip to the pyramids is complete without a little ride on a camel for some photos. This guy was a little bit angry, so I'm glad I wasn't on him. He's freaking out just a little. Holy crap! Our 10-minute camel ride cost about 45 Aussie dollars plus a $10 tip for the driver, which is a lot, but it was an awesome experience. Oh, and this is the angry camel getting over his angriness. Sitting on a camel in the pyramids. Would you just look at this view of the pyramids? It's absolutely a picture of dreams. Just a little bit down from the pyramid, you'll find the Sphinx. With the head of a human and the body of a lion, it's a super imposing sight as well. One of the funniest things about the Sphinx is that if you follow its line of sight, it's pretty much looking directly at a Pizza Hut. Not gonna lie, I never realised the Sphinx actually had a tail too. Honestly, those pyramids have been on my bucket list forever. So good. Believe it or not, all of these shopkeepers try to sell stuff in US dollars because they don't trust the Egyptian pound right now because of how much it is fluctuating in the market. And of course, like many nice places, there's a lot of rubbish everywhere, so make sure you take away your rubbish. And look at this last view of the pyramids as we drove back to our hotel. Phenomenal. The next day we went on a day tour to Alexandria, the second largest city in Egypt. Our first stop was catacombs, which, believe it or not, were found accidentally in 1900 when a donkey fell down the entrance. So these catacombs are dated back to about the 2nd century and are a good combination of Roman and Egyptian architecture and history. Another major tourist attraction in Alexandria is Pompey's Pillar, which is one of the oldest and highest memorial columns in the world and dates back to Roman times in Egypt. After lunch, we headed to Cape Bay, which is a 15th century fort built to defend Alexandria from crusaders. The fort's mentioned many times throughout Egyptian history. So this here is where the old lighthouse was that was an ancient wonder of the world and got knocked down in an earthquake. Walking around, you start to understand the sheer size of this fort, but you also get some really lovely views of Alexandria in the background. After a quick early morning flight from Cairo to Aswan, we were off on a little boat to Philae Temple. It's quite a pleasant boat ride over to the island, and as you turn a certain corner, you just get this epic view of Philae Temple. Would you look at that? Awesome.
So this one's Philae Temple. And the funny thing about it is it used to actually be on the island of Philae, but they moved it block by block because when the Nile got dammed, it was underwater a little bit. And you can actually see the darker bits are where the water was. Pretty crazy actually. But when they moved it, they didn't get it quite in line. So the back room there used to line up to the front room, but it doesn't now. So got here about 9 AM and there were a million people already, but now it's just nuts. So those black poles in the distance are where Philae was before they moved it. All here.
During Egypt's Roman period, Philae Temple was actually turned into a church, so you can see Roman crosses in and around the place. There's even a little bit of Roman graffiti on a few of the walls as well.
I'm also just dying of heat out of here because we had to get up at 2 AM to catch a flight and my boots had to be worn. So now I'm in long pants and boots in like a million-degree heat. Glamorous.
I reckon within about a minute of us being on the boat on the way back to the dock, this guy was trying to sell us bracelets, necklaces, maps, anything you can think of. Now for one of the things I was looking most forward to on this trip, and honestly one of my highlights, sunset on the River Nile in a felucca.
There's no wind.
Felucca is a traditional wooden sailing boat used in Egypt and around the Mediterranean. Now, if you're up for it, there are actually tours where you can sleep on one of the larger feluccas overnight or for multiple nights at a time. The next morning, we were up again super early in order to get down to Abu Simbel.
Abu Simbel, just south of Aswan. Another one that had to get moved. It was about 72 meters further down, but when they were building the dam, it was going to be underwater. So they transferred it piece by piece again. That there is the head of this one, but that's how they found it down the bottom, so they didn't want to change it. They wanted it to be exactly how it was. I tell you what, it's probably about 35 degrees already at 9 AM in the morning. There's no way you come here in a hot month. So just be warned that pretty much everywhere you go to in Egypt will have about 1 million people also seeing it. I didn't even go in the other temple because there were just far too many people lining up and it's so hot and stuffy inside.
After Abu Simbel, it was time to drive back to Aswan and hit the water for our Nile cruise. For whatever reason, I don't have the footage, but there were literally guys on boats down on the water throwing things up to sell to people on the ship. We made a quick nighttime shore visit to see Kom Ombo, a temple dedicated to the crocodile god Sorbek, and the colours and engravings were absolutely phenomenal. Another early morning as we made our way to Edfu Temple, getting there about 5:45 before the sun even rose, and standing in line for quite a while. Look how crazy this line is.
People everywhere.
At the top of the arcade, you can see pictures of Horus smiting his enemies. Now, Edfu Temple is the Temple of Horus, and it was built between 237 and 57 BC. The temple was built during the Roman period of Egypt, so the architecture is slightly different to that of temples built pre-300 BC.
That was wild, trying to see the sacred bit of the temple.
We were meant to get horse and carts, but there weren't enough, so we ended up in this dodgy old bus. But it did the trick and we got back to the boat nice and safe. During the afternoon, I got to sit back on the deck of our ship and watch the Nile go by. The views were absolutely stunning.
They reckon there's about 300 of these cruise ships up and down the Nile between Luxor and Cairo. I can see right now roughly 8.
Hundreds of boats on the Nile means that there's quite a line-up to get through the Esna Lock.
I've had to come back into the cabin because I went up to the deck to watch the sunset, which was beautiful, but we're now driving through a heap of smog and it's so unpleasant.
Our first stop the next day when we disembarked in Luxor was the Valley of the Kings. This one here is the tomb of King Ramesses IV, and you can just see that the colours of the carvings are amazing. Now, King Tutankhamun was also buried here, but we didn't go into his tomb. Just down the road was Hatshepsut Temple, or Hot Chicken Soup Temple, as our guide said when he was trying to explain the pronunciation to us. Now, this queen tricked the Egyptians into allowing her to be queen by saying she was the daughter of the sun god. Clever lady. And then lastly, we have Karnak Temple. By now, I was super sick and pretty templed out, but it was an absolutely amazing sight. And between Karnak and Luxor temples, there's a 3-kilometre path of Sphinx heads, which they've only recently uncovered. While we were in South Sinai, we got to go visit St. Catherine's Monastery, which is the longest inhabited monastery on earth. The monks still do a lot of gardening and provide for themselves, including harvesting a lot of olives to sell the oil. Inside the monastery, there's both a church and a mosque, but its biggest claim to fame is this: the bush in which God showed himself to Moses, Moses' burning bush.
Between my cold and the altitude, there's quite a little trek up that hill.
This is the big blue hole in Dahab. We didn't have much time, so no swimming here, but it looks like a snorkeler's absolute dream. Although there is a lot of rubbish around, so again, lessens the experience a little bit, but I imagine this place would be absolutely bustling in summer. Across there, you can actually see Saudi Arabia.
I couldn't leave Sharm El Sheikh on the Red Sea without watching the sunrise. Now, at least it's only 6 a.m. this morning. Other wake-ups we've had throughout the trip to go on tours and stuff has been, 3:30, 4:30, 4 o'clock. It's been absolutely insane, but everywhere has been amazing. And this view just tops it off. I'm finally making the 50 flight. It's not that far, but it's a lot of steps down to the Red Sea because it's our last day at Sharm El Sheikh and therefore our last day in Egypt. And I didn't think I could leave without going for a swim in the Red Sea. So we're gonna go do that, see if it parts. It won't. I tell you what, I was down here at 6 a.m. this morning watching the sunrise and people were already starting to save their seats. But I've come down this afternoon, it's about 3 o'clock, and there's way less people. The water's actually way warmer than up at the pool, and such a gorgeous view. Just got to keep an eye out for the fish because holy sugar, you all know that I don't like them at all. If I kick enough, the fish won't come near me, right? What are we doing? Just having a little swim in the Red Sea. Oh, it's salty too. It was quite a swim for my life after not exercising and being a bit sick for a few days. The pool and the Red Sea are about the only thing that this place has got going for it. I tell you what, supposedly a 5-star resort, but our rooms are probably more like 2-star. Now, I've stayed at some dodgy hotels, and the stories that a couple of people in our group have of their room, no hot water, aircon not working, and then the property not fixing it, it's not really 5-star at all. I don't know. And I mean, I haven't really even gotten to eat because I've been sick, so I can't say much about the food, but certainly the pool has been the highlight for me. I did say the pool was my highlight, but the view of the Red Sea from here, my balcony, is pretty good too.